Well, hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Syracuse Football Postgame presented by Kraus Health. And frankly, there is only one word to describe what we just watched in Pittsburgh in a 19-9 loss for Syracuse to the Panthers, and that word is pitiful. A pitiful performance, an anemic performance by the Syracuse offense under backup quarterback Carlos Del Rio Wilson. Yes, but certainly his offensive coordinator and his head coach did not put him in a position to succeed. Dino Babers breaks a vow he set 2 weeks ago to not underuse Sean Tucker. The Syracuse defense provided opportunity after opportunity after opportunity for this offense. And on a day there was no mud for once at Pittsburgh. The weather was perfect. It was in the mid 70s. Usually Syracuse and Pittsburgh in November weather, that's football weather, right? And you get these rainy, cold, miserable mud games. With no mud on the field, Syracuse's offense stuck in the mud, and a pitiful performance to say the least. The Orange fall to 6-3. They've lost 3 in a row. They're starting to push the envelope in terms of depth on this team. More injuries on the defensive side of the ball, which they overcame today. I have no complaints with the Syracuse defense. I don't think anybody should have some complaints with the Syracuse defense. Marlowe Wax with a monster day, 13 tackles, but man, it was just a pathetic, anemic day for the Syracuse offense. And, you know, you've got a freshman quarterback out there. Garrett Schrader tried to give it a go, couldn't do it, and Carlos Del Rio Wilson just fell flat. So we welcome you aboard. Those of you that are watching live, we do this after every Syracuse football game here on Facebook, here on YouTube, and on Twitter as well. If you do miss the show, just a reminder, you can find the replay on YouTube, on syracuse.com, on our social media channels as well. We'll start highlighting your comments shortly here, so jump in the comment section. Tell me what you think about this one, and we'll discuss it as we go here. So let's just start with a few comments here. Rich says, well, it was a fun 6 weeks. William says embarrassing. I think that's an apt word. Dave saying they were looking like the Detroit Lions out there. John hits on the best point of this game. The play calling was terrible. Tucker not used at all. Jermaine thinks this team's falling apart. Hard to disagree with that. Antonio looks at the offensive line, which did not play well. Tucker had no breakaway power whatsoever. Mary Ellen, flat game. The offense did not show up. This is the end of a good season. There's 3 games to go for this team, but it looks like they are certainly stumbling down the stretch. Groundhog Day for Joe at this point. Dave noting 6 wins is satisfactory for the program, but not for us fans. We want to see a good product on the field, and we are not seeing that right now. Andrew notes a good play for the defense. The offense lost the game. Al saying, oops, jumped over Al. Al says offensive line deserves the game ball from Pittsburgh. John thinks a 7-5 team at best, more likely 6-6. So you guys continue the conversation here in the comments. I'll highlight as we go. Look, this was just a pathetic performance from Robert and I. I think Robert and I and Jason Beck have put some life into this offense. They deserve credit for a number of things, but they did not put their backup quarterback in a position to succeed today. They relied way too much on Carlos Del Rio Wilson throwing the football. It was a gross misuse again. How this can happen for a second time in 3 weeks, that Sean Tucker is misused. I understand that Pittsburgh keyed on him. I understand that Pittsburgh snuffed him out when they actually did try and get him the football. But the fact that Tucker had only 10 carries in this game is inexcusable. It's pathetic, and it's just a miscarriage of justice, football-wise, right? That you take your best player with your backup quarterback on the field and only give them the football for 10 carries. This is the exact same problem that they had against Clemson. Al notes it here, no RPO. Carlos Del Rio Wilson is capable of doing that. Now, I understand that Garrett Schrader runs that better. He's a more experienced quarterback. They didn't run Carlos Del Rio Wilson at all on some design quarterback plays, which he's certainly apt to do. And unfortunately, when Del Rio Wilson had some open receivers, he overthrew them. He tended to throw the ball high. Pittsburgh snuffed out something on film because they tipped 5 passes at the line. But again, I don't put it on him. I don't. He's got to make some of those throws. Don't get me wrong. He did connect a few times in this game to Damian Alford, a deep throw to DeMarcus Adams. I think Del Rio Wilson's got talent, but they put too much pressure on him to go out there and lead the way. how they didn't grind Sean Tucker, give Sean Tucker the ball more in the first half. So what you're doing is you're getting the offense off the field. You're handing the ball over to Pittsburgh time after time that loves to grind, that loves to eat clock. But that Syracuse defense, time and again, stepped up. They intercept Kadon Slovis in the end zone. Isaiah Johnson comes up with a pick right around the 10-yard line, getting the Pittsburgh offense off the field time and again. And the offense just kept going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. The Syracuse offense collects 145 yards of total offense. They go 3 of 14 on third down. And man, I'm afraid to look at the numbers here, but they only had 25 rushing yards. They kept the penalties down. If anything, Pittsburgh handed them some penalties. 9 penalties, 73 yards on the day. And yeah, Pitt had 339 yards total on the day, but you got to look past that because that Syracuse defense did all it could to get Pitt off the field, to step up. You have Jatius Gear go down, a couple other guys banged up on that defense. They're pushing the envelope as it is in terms of depth on that defense, but they get a couple of takeaways and put Syracuse in position to do something offensively. But Pitt collects 9 tackles for loss total on the day, 6 sacks of Carlos Del Rio Wilson. This offensive line completely fell apart in pass protection. And I understand that maybe they didn't see some things, some lanes for Tucker to run in. Doesn't matter. You have got to give Sean Tucker the ball more than 10 times. That is pathetic. He only had 2 catches on the game, so he only touched the ball 12 times. How does this happen again? 2 weeks after it happened at Clemson, when he only touched the ball 10 times, he touches the ball 12 times in this game. And it finally happened, by the way. You will not see a Rondé Gatson in the receiving stats because Pittsburgh doubled him. Pittsburgh bumped him. Pittsburgh took Gatson out of the game. It was bound to happen, right? So you had to shorten the field. Trevor Pena has 1 catch for 12 yards. How is he not utilized in the short passing game? This was just I keep coming back to this word. It's a pitiful performance from Dino Babers and Robert Anae. And I know Robert Anae has, earned some fans, and I like what he's done overall for the offense. And you have to give credit where it's due, what we saw early in the season. But teams are catching up to it. And this was yet another game, folks, where, look, this team is thin at certain positions, but they just got pushed around again. Pittsburgh has done this time after time to Syracuse. Syracuse has not won at Pittsburgh since 2001. So that streak continues. It's now 18 of 21 times since then that Syracuse has lost to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh absolutely owns Syracuse in this series, and it's the same story every year. No matter who's the coach, they just get run over. They just get pushed around all day. Now, again, the defense, I think, held its own and did what it could here. It was the offense that got pushed around today, and Joe, you say it right here. This was just a day you could put squarely on the coaches. The coaching was horrible in this game. The offensive coaching was horrible in this game. Frankly, I don't care what Dino Babers says at the press conference. As I said this 2 weeks ago, how you only give Tucker the ball that many times. You got to go down fighting with your best guy. If Pitt snuffs him out, Pitt snuffs him out. But they got too cute. They got too ahead of the game. They put the ball in Carlos Del Rio Wilson's hands way too much before they had to. Establish Tucker. Run the ball, right? How many times on first down are they throwing the ball? Third down play calling, pathetic. They're in the red zone, 3rd and 4. It was a 3rd and goal from the 4, and they only had 4 or 5 yards to go. And they pitch out to Tucker. He loses 4 yards. They got to settle for a field goal, right? Andre Schmidt was the only one who got on the scoreboard today, and he even missed a field goal on the day. Couldn't punch it in. Terrible in the red zone when they got the opportunities in the red zone. We mentioned the 3rd down failures. You got a 3rd down and 10, and you're running Sean Tucker up the gut, right? That's when you don't use Tucker. You don't use Tucker in the spots you're supposed to use him. And on 3rd and 10, you send him up the gut. 3rd down play calling, pathetic. Overall play calling, pathetic. Just not the way to use Carlos Del Rio Wilson. So listen, here's the deal. You got to hope Garrett Schrader is healthy. I felt bad for Carlos Del Rio Wilson out there. The safety at the end of the game, as Dale puts it here, just summed it up. They put way too much pressure on this kid. They totally misjudged what he could do. I don't put that on him, okay? We mentioned some of the flaws in his game. They have to be pointed out because I'm evaluating a performance. I don't put this on him, okay? He had to make some of those throws. the tip passes, as we mentioned, Pitt saw something there in this team, but I do not put this on him. I do not put this on a freshman quarterback in that spot. I put this on the coaches. I put this on the play calling. It was pathetic. And look, guys, Pitt's not that good. I'm sorry. Losing to Clemson is one thing. Losing to Notre Dame is another. Pitt's not a good football team. Pitt's a pathetic football team in a lot of ways. They won this game and, they've handled this series, so I can't take that statement too far. Pitt probably will barely get over the finish line and go to a bowl game here. But that's as beatable a Pitt team as Syracuse has faced in this entire stretch where Pitt has owned them in Pittsburgh. That was about as good as it gets of an opportunity. And so what if it's an ugly game, right? You're not winning beauty points here. You just had to end the losing streak, get a win somewhere you have not won since 2001, before my daughter was even born, right? And just get out of there with the win. And nobody would have thought the better of it if Syracuse had this kind of, tough day play calling, but got out of Pittsburgh with a win. You know what? Flush it, forget about it, move on. You're 7-2. Instead, you're 6-3. You're all the momentum from earlier in the season has popped, and people are starting to think, hey, it's basketball season. And this is a basketball team that's young, that we're going to have to be very patient with, that's got a freshman point guard and Judah Mintz. And, we'll talk about basketball Monday night. We are going to do a post game, by the way, after Monday night season opener against Lehigh at the JMA Wireless Dome. But for a while, it's like football had its moment and nobody's thinking about basketball. Timing couldn't be better for basketball. Here they are. And people are going to start to shift towards that and look at that team, because the football team is just falling apart here. Look, they're going to go to a bowl game, but do you want to? It is entirely possible they could lose out now. I think they'll beat Boston College, because Boston College that team is, they gave Duke a run on Friday night, but lost to Connecticut earlier this year. I think that team's beatable, but clearly you need Garrett Schrader back. I thought it was smart that they started Carlos Del Rio Wilson, in the sense that if Schrader can't be mobile, if Schrader can't run the ball himself, run the RPO, throw on the run, right, escape the sack, then you can't put him out there, because that's Schrader's game. So if he can't go, and he went through the warm-up process, by the way, we haven't even mentioned this yet, guys. Pittsburgh didn't even have their best player. Izzy Abanikanda didn't even play. They didn't have their best guy. They had a lot of great players on defense, don't get me wrong, but their all-world running back, who had 17 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards, the best running back in the ACC, one of the best in the country this year, he didn't even play. So it's not like he got run over by a guy that's been having a great year. He took the belt from Sean Tucker, partially because of the coaches holding him back, but he took the belt from Sean Tucker as the best running back in the ACC. He was not even out there. I don't even know what to say about that. Joe says they don't even deserve the bowl game if they lose out. RJ thinking beginning of season, the defensive line was a big question with all new players. The offensive line had all new returning players and was supposed to be good. Listen, I never understood, to be honest with you, that Syracuse got nominated for the Joe Moore Award. Okay, I think there's some individuals on that offensive line that are good. Matthew Bergeron, notably, who is going to play in the National Football League. But I never understood the nomination they got, considering all the penalties they had, the misfires they've had, the missed blocks they've had. I don't get that. And that comment, RJ, was spot on. They're the one with the experience. The defensive line, you cannot doubt the heart and the grit of that defensive line. Kayvon Darton being a primary example of that. This dude is 5'11", 260, right? He's out there fighting, scratching, and clawing. Caleb Okechukwu had another great play today, fighting through injuries. Garrett Williams gone, right? That defense is the heart of a lion and did everything it could to just give its offense, just get a couple possessions. They even get the ball back late. It's 17-9. One drive, go down the field, score, go for two, tie the game, stumble into overtime and get out of there with an ugly win, right? They couldn't even do that. And Pitt didn't even have their best player out there. They didn't even have their best guy. That's maddening. John, you're right. Carlos Del Rio Wilson can't hit his open receivers. But again, I'm not going to put too much on a freshman quarterback. He's got to hit those guys. But think about it. They haven't been in rhythm. They haven't been in timing all year. They only had a week to work at practice. It would appear to me that Schrader got some split reps at practice this week to see if he could go. Maybe he didn't. Maybe they just rested him and Carlos Del Rio Wilson got those reps. But it's all about rhythm and timing. I talk to Eric Dungy every Friday on the radio, and he made a really good point about that in our radio conversation this week about the rhythm and the momentum and the timing that a quarterback needs with his receivers. Carlos doesn't get that in practice because Schrader gets the first team reps. Understandably, he's the starter. So for him to come out there and just be on fire and be, connecting with these receivers, it's a catch-22 because no pun intended, but he had some open guys and every throw was, high. Ball comes off his hand high. Pitt was knocking down some passes. So I'm not completely excusing Carlos Del Rio Wilson because he's got to hit those open receivers, but the coaches did not put him in a position to succeed today. They didn't shorten the field for him. They made him run an offense he clearly was not capable of at this point. Where was the adjustment, right? As Michael notes here, I know Gatson was frustrated today. That was going to happen. Shout out to Gatson in the season he's had. Someone was going to shut him down, right? That was just inevitable. And it happened today. As Blake notes here, Carter and Wax had great games today. Man, Marlowe Wax, I know it's Mikel Jones that's nominated for the Bednarik Award as the best linebacker in the country, deservedly so. But Marlowe Wax is now right there in that conversation as one of the best linebackers in the ACC. Frankly, I think he's going to be one of the best in the country as he develops here. Jahad Carter, another spectacular game. He has been fantastic in these last 3 games. We mentioned the interception, broke up another pass. Thankfully, he was back on the field after he got banged up a little bit. So you've got some studs on this defense that are stepping up, that are filling in the gap. No Garrett Williams, other injuries on this defense. Gear goes down today, and they suck it up and put together a performance at the very least that Syracuse should have escaped with, right? Just maddening, just really frustrating at this point. Dave says it here. The momentum of this season broke when that defensive lineman hit Clemson's backup QB out of bounds late, a below average effort on both sides of the ball since then. And Dave, even then, that was Elijah Fuentes Cundiff for Syracuse. He got pushed into the Clemson quarterback, right? That wasn't even his fault. But your point is apt in this situation, Dave. Since the second half of that Clemson game, this team has gone off a cliff. Now, mostly on the offensive side of the ball. Not that the defense, had anything to write home about last week. They got run over by Notre Dame, so we got to be fair and note that. But, man, what has happened? What has happened since the second half of that Clemson game? They're up 21-10, looking like they're going to have a big upset and pull off a major win, top 5 win. By the way, by losing this game, Clemson has clinched the Atlantic Division. So they're going to represent the Atlantic Division in the ACC championship game no matter what. Clemson playing Notre Dame tonight, the last 2 opponents that Syracuse has faced here. So Syracuse, not that they deserve to be in that conversation given the way they played the last few weeks, but now the question becomes, what can they salvage and how can they salvage the rest of the year? You get Florida State at home. It's senior day, and senior day, we're going to see a number of guys that aren't seniors play their last games at the Dome. I fully expect Sean Tucker to play his last game at the Dome, though he hasn't, put up the numbers and been involved in the offense. But NFL scouts certainly know what his talent is. Guys like Mikel Jones, Garrett Williams will be honored. Unfortunately, can't play, of course, with the injury. And any number of players. I think Matthew Bergeron could be gone. It's not just a senior day; it's a goodbye game. It's a goodbye day for a number of players that are going to be moving on, right? So when you got all these dudes, and this team has dudes, this team has NFL level talent at a lot of positions, and we're seeing a team in a slide. So how does this leadership come together? How does Babers and company, really look inside themselves and figure out the best way forward here? You need Garrett Schrader back. He's not 100%. At this point, it doesn't matter. At least he had a week off. They'll rest him again and be careful with him going into the Florida State game, but he has got to come back for that game. He didn't look like himself out there in pregame warmups. Emily Liker and a number of people that were watching warmups discussing that before the game. He has got to play next week. He absolutely has to. Look, I'm not going to put too much on Carlos Del Rio Wilson. I think he certainly has the opportunity to be the quarterback of the future for Syracuse. He had a rough day today, but he was not put in a position to succeed due to a myriad of factors, right? So Schrader's got to come back. The defense is holding the line. But next week, guys, you get Jordan Travis, one of the best mobile quarterbacks in the ACC, a guy that shredded the Syracuse defense last year. As good as this defense has been and stepped up today, they struggle against quarterbacks like that. So you got to hold your own. You're going to need an offense to just, match what Florida State does. You got Wake Forest after that. Wake Forest, who's just slinging it. Sam Hartman is approaching the ACC record for quarterback touchdowns. I think he's at 95 right now. He could certainly get there. Taj Boyd has the record with 107. So, he'd really have to be on a blistering pace to get there, but he's in the conversation. Wake is a team that's really handled. There's been some good games between these two in recent years, but I'll take what Wake is doing right now over what Syracuse is doing, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Then he finished with Boston College, right? 3 of the last 4, starting with this game, on the road. So 1 more at home next week. Then you go on the road to finish, and it's a thinning team, and it's an offense that's just got to find itself, right? It didn't today. And it's not like the offense had to go out there and be flashy today. They just had to get the job done. They just had to do enough. They had to be smart, and they weren't. So I don't know how you explain this one away, particularly after 2 weeks after you vowed. I mean, Dino Babers comes to that press conference after the Clemson game, before he even takes questions. And I liked how he handled this. I gave him credit. I wrote a column right after that press conference, and I said, you know what? Agree or disagree, the guy owned it. He owned the time management issues. He owned not giving the ball to Tucker enough. Vows it will not happen again. 2 weeks later, it happens again. How does Babers not step in? Okay? How does Babers not step in? And if he was responsible for the play call stepping in over Anai, that's even more pathetic at this point. Jim, I know that Louisville smoked Wake last week, but I think it's a temporary glitch in the matrix. Wake Forest matching up with Syracuse, not good at this point. Your point is taken, but that's football. That's the ACC. Things can happen, right? So I wouldn't, judge Wake by that. Now, if Wake gets smoked by NC State tonight and they start to fall apart, that's a different conversation coming up here. But how does that happen, to go back to my point about Dino Babers, where Tucker only gets the ball 12 times, 10 carries, 2 catches? It's inexcusable. And it's not like the game was out of hand. It's 17-9 in the fourth quarter. In the first half in particular, where is Sean Tucker? How is this happening? You have got to counter what Pitt does. Pitt, even without their best player, they grind, they run the ball. Slovis made enough throws to Pitt's receivers. Jared Wayne Wayne had a great day. 6 catches, 102 yards, had a 24-yard catch. They hit a big one to Mumpfield as well. Slovis got picked off a couple of times. He was vulnerable, but he made enough throws in this game, right, to at least keep that Pittsburgh offense flowing enough. I just keep coming back to that, guys. How in the world does this happen again? 2 weeks after the coach vowed it wouldn't happen, got ahead of the media, got ahead of, frankly, I was ready to pepper him with questions at that press conference. And I said, okay, you want to come out and own it? Great. But that's your one get out of jail free card. It happens again 2 weeks later. Now, am I making too much of that? Let me know, guys. You've been rolling here in the comments. Let me highlight some more here, because you guys have been hot and heavy and offering some great stuff here in the comments, right? Am I overstating that? Am I missing that? Am I missing something here? What haven't we discussed so far that needs to be put out there? Maybe it's what Kevin said here. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe I'm giving too much credit to Tucker that he could handle an offensive line that, Kalen Ellis is banged up, but certainly is an offensive line that's capable of opening up some holes and getting Sean Tucker rolling here, right? Okay, Jim says, I look forward to hearing your questions for Dino at the presser. William says the same thing. I mean, he's got to answer some questions here. These post-game pressers aren't always the best because it's right after the game. It's actually better to get the coach after he's watched the film and he's really aware of what went wrong. Not that he shouldn't be questioned after this game, but, coaches always kind of use that I got to watch the film expression and all those things at this point. But I don't know what he can say. I really don't know what he can say. That's probably going to be my question. How exactly do you justify giving Sean Tucker the ball 12 times in this game? it's bewildering to me. It's absolutely bewildering to me. Go down fighting, right? At least go down using your best player to the max. He's healthy now, by the way. It's not one of those things from a few games ago where he's still battling a body injury and you can't use him as much as you'd like to. He's healthy. By the way that they run Tucker, Al brings up the point here. Frankly, I think he missed a few runs. I think he missed where the offensive line opened up some holes. But, my criticism of Tucker is going to be few and far between, right? Did they change things up in how they run Tucker? Do you go more zone read? Do you pitch the ball more? It looked like they were going to run a little option at some point. And Carlos Del Rio Wilson is certainly big enough to go out there, challenge a defender, pitch the ball away. That could be a turnover waiting to happen too with a young quarterback. So you don't really want to get into that too much. But this Robert and he was just lost today. And Jeff, Gadsden didn't get the books. I think Pitt did a great job defending him. Carlos Del Rio Wilson actually tried to force a few throws to Gadsden when he wasn't there. He missed him wide open in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you guys remember that play, saw that play. So, but again, it's a freshman quarterback, so he's going to miss those throws. If that's Garrett Schrader out there 100% and he's missing those plays, then you put that on the quarterback a little bit. So, look, you got 3 games to go. You're going to get Garrett Schrader back next week, I would assume, unless he's just not healthy enough to go. They do need him back, but I think even next week, how healthy is he, right? Another week, lower body injuries, ankle injuries can be tricky, right? You'd almost rather break your ankle and let it heal as opposed to, a sprain, which can linger. And Schrader's had an ankle injury lingering all year. But you know what? It's November. You got to toughen up. You got to get out there and play it. I'm not questioning Schrader's toughness there. He tried to go today, and you can't put him out there if he's ineffective. But just one of those things now, it's like you got to put him out there. You have to. And I don't have the record right in front of me, guys. I'll look it up and put it in my recap. Dino Babers' November record is terrible. And here we go again, where we could be sliding down and adding to that. And look, that's injuries. That's a number of things. Depth has been an issue at Syracuse. It's not completely his fault, but some of that's got to be on him, right? This is year 7. And as this team, the only time they've had a good November record from what I recollect was the 2018 season. You got to win these games. Got to win these tough games. Pitt's not even that good. I mean, this is not like the last 2 weeks where you say that Clemson and Notre Dame are just better and they just overwhelm you because they have better players. That was not the case today. Not the case at all. And as Al says here, and we'll end on this note, defense was not the problem. No, it was not. Not today. This one is squarely on Robert and I. It's on Dino Babers, somewhat on the quarterback, but I put him way down the list of blame today. Syracuse just outcoached itself, frankly. You can say Pat Narduzzi outcoached Syracuse. They didn't really do anything. They did exactly what you're supposed to do against Syracuse. And the drought remains. Man, Syracuse hates going to Pittsburgh. They've played every year since 1955, but haven't won there since 2001. And that drought will continue at least for another couple of years, because when Pittsburgh returns, they'll come back to the JMA Wireless Dome next year. So there you have it, friends. Syracuse loses to Pitt in a pitiful performance. And they get Florida State next week. That's a primetime game, 8 o'clock on the ACC network. So we'll be here, depending on where you're watching. We get people watching from all over the country, but here on the East Coast, late night coming up next week, but a little earlier for people watching on the West Coast and all over the place. So, that doesn't matter. We'll be here one way or the other. Programming note, we are going to start doing basketball post-game shows. So that will be on the Syracuse basketball Facebook page we have for syracuse.com. Make sure you guys like that so you get the notification when we come on. We'll be on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube as well. We'll pop that on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter at Brent Axe Media, before Elon Musk shuts it down. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on Twitter, frankly, but still there for now. So we're not going to do every basketball game for post game. We'll do select non-conference games. And then once Syracuse gets to ACC play, we'll be on after pretty much every ACC game. But we will be on Monday night after the season opener just to take a look at the Orange after one game in the book. So come join us Monday for some basketball talk. We'll be back next week for football after that game. And don't forget also Orange Weekly that comes your way on all these same channels Thursdays at noon Eastern time. So we'll chat with you guys again then. thank you so much for coming by. As always appreciate your support. Always appreciate you guys and your great comments. And on we go here to see how Syracuse recovers from a pretty bad loss here, a pitiful loss to the Pitt Panthers, 19-9. This has been Syracuse Football Postgame, presented by Krause Health. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you again on Monday night.